Here today, I am with Eric Freeman. Now, there is a video on Vice. It's got almost 6 million views,
Uh-huh.
and I'm gonna let Eric introduce himself to you in a second. And thank you very much for coming on.
Quite welcome. Thank you for having me.
Why were you selected by Vice? What is your expertise?
I have been studying the occult and Satanism since I was little. Um, while other kids are drawing pictures of the sun and houses, I was drawing pictures of monsters and mad scientists and the devil. And I've just always been like a weird kid. I've always liked horror movies and I guess the I guess the darker nature of life. Um, the inevitable aspect of learning to live with knowing your mortality and not letting it get in the way, I guess, is always been my fascination. Um, Vice came to me. They were doing the Devil's Due movie, and I'm fairly well known for my aspects because I'm not. I think one of the things that needs to go over is there's a huge differential between Satanism and devil worship, and that's where I think most people get lost. There's a lot of stuff in movies and TVs, and it's they're called TV programs for a reason, and so you have to look behind why certain things are being utilized for certain aspects. I mean, the government feeds on fear; it utilizes fear to control people and to get them to do exactly what they want, and so. I've spent my entire life basically just trying to admonish the truth about my reality with with what's gone on. Um, I just always kind of I'm a scientist at heart, and so I always wanted to know the truth. I always wanted to know. I didn't want to know, as I said, what we saw in movies or TVs or someone's fiction book. Um, I wanted to know what was real, and I have I don't know, maybe a death wish since I was little that I've tried to utilize to overcome aspects that other people wouldn't be able to. Uh, just because I think just because someone has the realization of death doesn't mean that they have to fear death. The fact that they don't fear death will they can accomplish things that anyone in their right sane mind would never even attempt because it's just too dangerous. And so I've spent my entire life in that realm. Um, I was almost a cop, and I only applied in very particular areas where it was actually going to be real police work, not giving tickets or So I didn't want anything to do with any of that. That doesn't feed my I guess my lust for war might be a good way to put it. And so I've just done it with life instead of in a particular job. And so from what I've been able to discern from my expertise in 30 plus years of study of all this, uh, I think there are different factions of what people would classify as Satanists. I think some are definitely not per se modern Satanists as LaVey. And so, there's something called the Satanic Temple. Okay, and they're doing their Baphomet statue or whatever, and it's an incomplete bastardization of the duality of nature, which is what Baphomet is supposed to represent, basically. It's all aspects of nature fused into one particular thing. And so they've bastardized that concept, and then they've thrown on this political nonsense with the kids, and I don't think kids have any reason to be anywhere near that statue, personally. I think that the Satanic Temple are instrumental in destroying family values, um, as well as, I mean, there's a lot of SJW stuff that's going on right now. If you're familiar with social justice warriors, where offended culture and cancel culture and all that, where there's no free speech anymore. There's no, everyone is so offended and so upset with their personal feelings at any kind of shock-driven instrument that they throw at them, that they lock up and they turn into fearful animals. And then they'll let anyone do anything they want to control them for their own personal safety. It's really just an ego issue. And I think Satanists spend a lot of time breeding out ego. And so, again, Vice came to me. I have a buddy, again, from Cleveland, whose name is DeWitt, who fronts a band called Integrity. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not, but they're just this tiny band from Cleveland that used the occult and will in a Nietzsche format to become a worldwide sensation as far as that particular type of music. And so Andy Capper, who used to be I believe, the producer for all of Vice, knows my friend DeWitt, and they were discussing this organization called the Nine Angles. And they came to me about doing an interview about the Nine Angles. And the Nine Angles, I believe, was a British / possibly MI6 fear-based campaign. Because if you look who used to own it, it's David Myatt, I believe is his name. He was in charge of that particular group, and what that group was supposedly, and I have yet to find any evidence of any of this. Because I'll tell you honestly, I have 2 children of my own. If some of the things that I've heard that Satanists do were done anywhere around me, I would definitely be in prison. I can tell you confidently that I would it wouldn't even happen because I would take care of the situation before it got anywhere close to those type of situations. When they talk about child molestation, the bleeding of children, I have yet to see anything in the realms that I have delved in that has anything to do with that. Now, I will say, I believe that certain organizations were put up as a front to distract the public from what's going on a much higher level. And so, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, from my research, I would think the Vatican is probably the most evil institution in the world. And it is seen as this bastion of good and hope. They are the richest city-state in the world. They have everything. They refuse to deliver anything. When they get caught raping children, they don't prosecute. Like, you would think if people actually listen to the words of Christ, that they would immediately take that person and make sure that that person was punished. You know, heaven or hell. And so that person deserves hell. Instead, they take those people and they move them to these unsuspecting parishes where the parents don't know, the kids don't know, and they just give them a whole new flock of victims. And so, you know, people, it's just a very complicated thing because Satanists, at least LaVeyan Satanists, and I'm not saying there aren't other types of Satanists because there's evidence in the Satanic Temple, which I would consider them to be neo-hippie liberals masquerading in black, using the term Satan to get attention, is what I would call it. They are not Satanists. They do not understand. Satanism is about LaVeyan Satanism. I will continue to re-reference that it's LaVeyan Satanism because that was taken. Anton LaVey took some of the greatest minds ever and put them together into a concise format for basically people that didn't really like to follow the rules for them to get the most out of life. When you know, as you're raised, you're told, if you do this, if you do this, if you do this, everything will be wonderful. And then you find out at a certain point, it's not necessarily the case unless you are born rich and privileged. So you have to claw and scrape to get sometimes whatever you can, depending on your situation in life. And so through LaVey's book, The Satanic Bible, it gives a format for people that are not sheep, people that do not like to be penned up, don't like to be told what to do. They like to have their own path. And it teaches them how to responsibly utilize that power that I think most people allow society to allow certain, let's say, glitches in their personality to turn into negative things instead of trying to utilize them for positive measures. And I think the Christian church is involved in that too, because there's a ton of guilt, there's a ton of just referencing to just not being acceptable in what I would consider a delusion's eyes. And so I think it's been terrible for our entire society, honestly, to be and we were not, especially the United States, was not built as a Christian nation, and it now is a Christian nation. That being said, I will fully state that I am online completely with conservatives where it has gone way too far, where I think liberals are completely insane at this point, and the rule of law is dead, and it needs to be revamped so that facts and logic are reutilized instead of just anyone's gut instinct to jump at whatever, fancy cracker they put in front of them.
Well, we love big, long answers on this channel and striking red backgrounds from antiquity. That is absolutely classic there. Before we delve into your belief system and Anton LaVey, just got a few quick questions to fire off. One about your childhood.
Uh-huh.
Is it true that age 6 you tried to summon the devil?
Absolutely. I watched an episode of Fantasy Island. That's how old I am, if anyone remembers that. And there was some kind of, I think it was more of a Pan type situation, but it was it was a woman. I remember her. She tried to call forth the devil to get everything she wanted in life. And, who doesn't want, I think I was looking for an Evel Knievel motorcycle toy, I think is what I was looking for at that point. It wasn't anything, riches, fame, good looks. It was nothing intelligent at all. It was, I want this Evel Knievel motorcycle toy that my mom won't buy me. And so I attempted to sell my soul to the devil for an Evel Knievel toy. And lo and behold, nothing happened, shockingly. And so that was actually a really, I think, important aspect of all of it, because the fact that nothing happened broke through, I guess, that delusion of what I was seeing on TV. And I was like, hey, this doesn't work. Well, if this doesn't work, how do I make it work? Or does it not work? It's too good to be true. Even when I was a kid, I've never been a dummy. I knew when something was too good to be true. And so it led me on a pathway, I guess, to truth, to investigate things. And so, I guess that's the answer to that question.
Okay, let's put the background in context then. Your house has got a lot of history. Could you expand on that?
I live in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm originally from Los Angeles. Cleveland's a nice city. It's slightly backwards in its mentality compared to Los Angeles. Los Angeles is much more progressive in good and bad ways. And so I've been here for years. I've done a million things, whether it be most of my life I've spent in security, whether it be nightclubs, strip bars, private security, whatever it may be, which also, I guess, fed into that war mentality that I had. But I think, I don't know if war is the correct word, because it's definitely a warrior mentality, but it's utilized more in a protective measure, is the way I've always utilized it. Because, are we allowed to swear?
Yeah, after the first 5 minutes, YouTube said it's okay to swear.
Okay. And it's not even that bad. Basically, when someone wants to come out and be an asshole when everyone else is having a good time, I take special pride and pleasure in showing that particular person what kind of asshole someone really can be. And so to me, it's a lesson where, and there's probably a couple of thousand people that can tell you, I can assure you, if they did something at my door that I found to be inappropriate, that would be repeat behavior somewhere else, I handled it right then to make sure that it stopped with me. And so, I mean, that's just the way I am. It's the way I'm built. And so there's a house in Cleveland called the House of Wills. It's an 1846 German opera hall / Masonic temple. And in the 1940s, it was turned into a funeral home. And so it had sat on the market for maybe 5 years. Absolutely splendid structure, hand-built by craftsmen. If you pull off the walls in the moldings and in the plasterwork, you can see the fingerprints, you can see the horsehair. It's things are never going to be built like that ever again in our particular lifetime. And so I find it to be a travesty when people just let viable things rot. It's just a disgusting thing that I watch on a daily basis. My art is all based on, which is actually how I made my money. Is I used to make really fucked up dolls, graphic representations of horrible moments in time, so that, again, back to Christianity, I think through Christianity they tell you to turn the other cheek. I think that mentality allows a lot of things to slip through the cracks. And so I made things that you couldn't block out. I made them overly graphic to make sure that there was no possible way that you were going to not look at it and not feel something. You know, to me, art is about feeling. And it's not necessarily about feeling good or bad. It's about representing life. And so I would drive by this house all the time. I used to work for the city. I was a garbage man. Fancy. And I would drive by this one particular house all the time. It was a funeral home. It was called the House of Wills. And it just absolutely spectacular. And so many years after I worked for the city, someone sent me an email. And they're like, hey, you should go check this out. And the house was, I think it was listed for $1 million. It was like $896,000. Granted, in the worst neighborhood, not only in Cleveland, but it's almost always on the top 10 list of the worst areas in the country. And so, knowing this house sat for 5 or 6 years, and I watched it. I just watched it go from something that was beautiful to something that was yearning to be beautiful again, I guess. And so I went on a path to go get it. And I was broke, man. I didn't have any money. I was working a regular job then. I forget, I might have even been waiting tables at that point. I might have been doing security 1 or 2 nights a week. And so I went in there the first time, and the first time I went in there, scrappers had already gotten in the house. The roof had a 20 by 20 foot hole in it in one of the rooms, so that you would walk up these stairs into the room and it would just be sunshine, which is pretty sweet to look at, but not good for a house. And so, I went in there and I told them, all right, I'll give you 20 grand. And they were like, well, you know how much they want. And I was like, it's not my concern. I'm going to give you 20 grand for this house. And they were like, well, I'm not even going to put that bid in because it's just a waste of my time. And I was like, put the bid in, and I'm going to see you in a couple of weeks for my keys. And so he was like, you know what? I think you're funny. And just to show you that I know you think you're cool, I'm going to show you that's not how the real world works. And I'm like, all right, dude, I'll see you in 2 weeks, my man. And so 2 weeks later, he called me and he said, I don't know how you did it, but I have your keys. And so and it sounds like I'm not really sure how it happened, honestly. I can't tell you that. I can tell you that Levan Satanists do not believe in the devil. I feel myself to be literally blessed, no matter what pathway I took, and I can get into in a little bit why I chose Satanism over anything else, because my main mentality is helping people, and I think that would be the last choice most people would make. But to me, it just made sense, and I'll get into that in a minute.
Before we get into that, what is your definition of Satanism?
I mean, Satanism to me is utilizing your natural, raw, inherent instincts to get the most out of life and to surpass most people, because you won't be kept down. I mean, Levan Satanists use the term Satan not only as a shock tactic because it scares people inherently, but if you read the book Paradise Lost by John Milton, Satan saw God in a light of, I guess it would be ignorance, and so even though he knew he wouldn't win, he felt it was the righteous and just cause to protect those that couldn't protect themselves. And so it's basically the utilization of inherent skills to make the underdog against all odds the winner. And so back to the house, I don't know exactly how I got the house. I know on paper how it worked out. Does that make it any more feasible? No, it doesn't. What had happened is the insurance company paid out to the title company for the damage of the house from the scrappers, and with my $20,000, it equaled exactly what they wanted for the house. And it was a timing. I consider it to be fate. Otherwise, I don't think I'd have it. It was literally split-second timing that I don't think anyone, at least any human, could technically be that savvy to orchestrate in that type of manner. And so I left it up to fate. And, I got my house. Saving my house, well, let's say getting my house and saving my house are two completely different situations. I paid nothing for it. I have literally blood, sweat, tears. I risked my life because of the neighborhood. People in the neighborhood are economically at a very disadvantaged point, and they have very little money. And to them, $5 in scrap metal is enough to eat. And so for the first several years, I had to spend most of my time repairing break-ins to the house instead of actually fixing the house. Fixing the house is a whole different situation because there was, I would say, 2 feet of plaster, rubble, concrete on every surface of every floor, and it's 49,600 square feet. And so I spent years I had to do it by myself because I didn't have money, and so any money that I had went directly back into the house for years. It was literally a futile. It was futile for years, man. I honestly, I thought that I was going insane, and I thought I was in some kind of weird purgatory limbo of hell, that I was just doing the exact same thing day and day, come in there, fill up buckets with rubble, move them to the pile, go back, fill up another bucket, move it to the pile. For years, I had to do that myself because I was working full time, and so I didn't have, I only had part time and weekends to work on it, and so it has definitely been an interesting journey, let's say. I've been locked inside of my unit, and they tried to set the house on fire. I've had thousands of death threats. because I feel like homesteading the house. And the funny thing is I'm really into it for several reasons. A is saving architecture. I think if there's anyone in their sane mind would not have taken this. They wouldn't have taken this on. It's not the type of situation that anyone with a business mind or a construction-based mind, I think would do it. But I've always been in construction, and so I knew how to do all the work myself. And so I just took an old school punk rock mentality to it, where you're not going to get in my way and I'm going to get it done, and hell or high water, it's going to happen, like it or not. And I am millimeters away from it being completed. And so it and honestly, without Levain Satanism, it would have never happened. It'd be gone. There's a million buildings here that are one-of-a-kind architectural, stunning masterpieces that have just been completely laid to waste and bulldozed up and gone. Nothing was reclaimed. Nothing was reutilized. It just goes into the dump. And that mentality of disrespecting history is so repugnant to me that I can't stand by and watch something happen. When you can do something about it. Why? Why would you? It's like all these idiots filming shit now all the time. Someone's getting murdered and they're there with their cameras, and if they would try to jump on that guy and take his knife, that guy no one would be dead. It's just I don't know where our society has gone, honestly. And so, I don't know, will and hard work does pay off. It does.
In the satanic community, do you have a title? And also in the house, do you have a room for rituals? Do you participate in rituals?
Absolutely. I have. Have you ever seen the movie Carrie?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so remember Under the Stairs? Carrie's special room where her mother would put her?
Yes.
I have a room that's filled with stuff just like that. I'm a big movie fan. I love old horror movies and apocalypse movies, and so the house has been redistributed in many different time periods. There's an Egyptian section. There's a Greco-Roman section it's a 700-person opera hall that holds, 2 floors. It's all done. It looks like the Colosseum. That's being redone in the same motif behind me with the red and gold and black is I guess a Nero-style Colosseum is what I'm going to do it. But I do have a ritual room. I do not do rituals. My ritual room is a homage to Anton LaVey, and I have a ton of LaVey's personal artifacts and personal items from the Black House before they tore it down. That I have the spell stone from the original Black Altar. That it's in anytime you see the Black Altar, there's like a weird little cutout, and there's a spell stone with a small skull, which was supposedly where he would cast spells into to get the results he wanted. That all sounds absolutely ridiculous to me, and I am quite positive 90% of it was for show. And so I have one. It has never been, I don't do rituals. The way I perceive magic, which I really could perceive as quantum physics, is the manipulation of reality through mental will. And so if you can do that, you don't need some stupid ceremonial dagger. You don't need some stupid cloak. You need none of those things. And so I have none of that. I've never utilized that. Getting back to the Vice interview, if you watched it, if you watch me in the video, I have on a suit. If you watch who actually does the ritual, it would be Thomas who interviewed me, because I don't do rituals, and I don't care how much money you're going to pay me. I'm not doing something that I feel is disingenuous. And so when you watch that video, um, Thomas is doing the ritual, and they were really mad at me about it because they were like, well, we came all the way here from England and da-da-da. And I was like, that's cool. Maybe you want to discuss stuff with people ahead of time. I'm not doing anything I don't do. And so to me, that whole interview actually turned out to be about me, and it really was supposed to be about the 9 angles. And so that's why they threw that ritual scene in there, is because, again, as I said, I don't believe the 9 angles is really a real organization. I think it's a fear factor device, because if you look it up, everything that you've ever seen in movies or TV, that supposedly is their particular rituals, and I've never seen hide nor hair of it, man. I've never seen anything like, when we talk about the deep state, or we talk about, what is it, endochrome? In the pedophiles, I think that is, again, a shadow organization that was put forward to distract the public from what's going on. Because now, so for David Myatt, he's hardcore Satanist, and then all of a sudden, now he's Muslim. And so as soon as the enemy changed in the 90s from the Satanic Panic, which, if you've done any research on that, there were 500 different reports to the FBI about people, pedophiles, child torture camp, blah, 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 and not a single one was true. And it's on the it's on the internet, it's in writing, it's in books, it's proven facts. But that doesn't mean that something that's above their pay grade isn't really going on. And I do think something like that is going on. And so, I'll be honest. For a minute, I was gonna drop Satanism. I was gonna completely remove myself from any aspect of it, because it doesn't really give, with all the doom and gloom and the rest of the nonsense that's attached to it, it's not a productive measure in certain things. But I think that if anyone can try to figure out who is doing what, I think it's someone from this side. I think it's someone who has ins and outs to things that other people don't have.